And as we wrap up Africa World Hour this evening, we talk about this issue, and we'd like to hear your thoughts about this. The Afrobarometer releasing its latest flagship report revealing that African youth are far less engaged in political and civic activities rather than their elders, with one key exception: protests. The findings are based on more than 53,000 interviews across 39 African countries. To unpack the numbers and what they mean for the continent's future, we're joined now by Lionel Essima Ossé, Afrobarometer Assistant Project Manager for North and West Africa. Very good evening to you, and thank you so much for speaking to us. Is it Lionel or Lionel?
It depends. It's Lionel for the Anglophones and Lionel for the Francophones.
Okay.
Good evening and thank you for having me.
All right. Thank you so much for speaking to us. So let's just start with a quick snapshot of what the report sets out to measure and why.
So the report focuses on political participation. So last year we started our series of flagship reports. So we did we portrayed a bigger picture of how we are fed on democracy for the past 25 years of Afrobarometer conducted surveys. So this year we've decided to come with a more specific thematic area, which is political participation and civic engagement in Africa, in order to give a much broader or specific picture of how Africans are engaged in the political domain across the continent.
Okay. So the report highlights an 18 percentage point gap in voter turnout between young people and older generations. So why do you think that there are fewer younger people who are involved in the political or democratic processes?
So let's say that so the report is showing that we have two key drivers of participation across the continent. So we have the need. So those who are in need, those who are more in need are less likely to engage. And also we have democracy. The more there is democracy, more people are engaged. And we know that across the continent, our data have shown that there is a decline in satisfaction with democracy. Maybe that explains why the youth are less engaged as compared to others, because there may be a youth satisfaction about how democracy has worked throughout the years on the continent.
So just in terms of civic engagement, do the younger generation have a lesser sense of a community spirit? And I ask this because I see your reports, they are less likely to go to town hall community meetings or even engage with local community leaders. Why is that?
So the explanation can be that the youth are dissatisfied, or they are not happy with the way things have been managed on the continent throughout the years, and them not showing up at those different political gatherings is a way of expressing that discontent. And also we need to also bear in mind that on our continent we use let's say the youth as puppets for political gatherings, and maybe they have begun to realize that they are being utilized by their leaders who are not actually delivering on their mandates for them across the continent.
So it's a form of protest, you'd say?
A protest and a discontent. Yeah, I prefer using discontent about the way things are being managed. They have the sense that them being there would not change anything.
Okay. No, I just meant a form of protest as in not engaging in those community or civic engagement tools available to them. So you focus on North and West Africa. Are there particular trends that you're seeing? And if so, what are they? And were there any surprises that you picked up in your study?
Come again, please.
I'm saying you focus on North and West Africa. Are there particular trends that you have picked up? And if so, what are they? And were there any surprises?
Yeah, there are some trends. So in West Africa, we see that we have countries such as Senegal and Niger, where we see the highest levels of participation and demonstration. For instance, we saw recently, I think that was last year, the youth protest in Senegal for for democracy in their country. We've seen the same thing in Nigeria with the NSAS, the protests from the protests against the violence from the security forces in Nigeria. So there are some trends, and we see that in Tunisia, for instance, in the northern part of the continent, exhibits the lowest levels of participation on the continent. So there are trends within those regions in West Africa and North Africa, with some countries exhibiting more higher levels of participation in civic engagement than others. And this is due to the youth activism in those countries.
So, would you define it as historical or political disparities? So, the reasons that there are differences in the voting patterns.
So differences in voting patterns. So definitely, yeah, the pathways are different. The pathways are totally different from one country to another, from one region to another. So you need to investigate deeper into the local political context of every country in order for you to have a better understanding, a better picture of why there are the discrepancies between one country to another. And as I was saying, it's good to take time to see how things are unfolded at the country level to understand why the dynamics are different moving from one country to another.
Okay, and I want to talk about digital platforms, what role they are playing, and is there hope of them boosting meaningful political participation, particularly amongst the youth?
I think from what we've seen happening in Kenya, whereby the protest movement led by the youth pushed the government to back off on a decision they took that was totally against the will of the population. So we've seen the same thing in Senegal, whereby the protests have led to, in some way, I'm not saying that it's the only contributor, but that protest has contributed a lot to bringing to power the main opposition party in the country. So those few examples, I think, are enough for me to tell that we should be hopeful that change is coming. It is in taking shape across the continent. Maybe it has not. It is not in the form that we would like it to be, but I think we should be hopeful looking at the good examples we have seen across the continent recently.
And just a final advice to policymakers on how to ensure greater participation of the youth, but also foster greater youth leadership.
An advice for them is to first of all take into account the concerns raised by the youth, not only use them as political puppets when they need them for political rallies to come and fill the numbers, but to consider their interests, to consider their concerns, to consider their views and opinion. And because, as I was saying earlier during this conversation, they feel disconnected. They feel discontent about how their countries are being led. So, and the advice is for them to come to them to engage in conversation and to create more space for the youth to participate. And also, there is an aspect that we didn't touch on. I think we need to the economic aspect of it is very important. Sometimes the youth believe that it is very expensive to participate in politics. I think we should lower the cost in quote of participating in politics for the youth across the continent. I think those two ways will surely bring something different to the table.
And Lionel, I hope that we will have a conversation, particularly on that, the thresholds and the cost of participation in democratic processes. I really thank you for your time.
Sure.
Lionel
Thank you very much for
Essima
having me.
Ossé, Afrobarometer's Assistant Project Manager for North and West Africa, just speaking to us about their latest flagship report on African youth, political and civic participation, just speaking about how they are not being included, even though they have the sheer demographic weight on other continents. So they 70% or more, but they seem to be participating less. And they're not leaders of the future. They are already leading, as I say, just in terms of demographic weight. But their say really does go a long way in what is happening now. So that's how we come to the end of Africa World Hour. We go into African Diaries.